Hello and welcome to Pardon My Disruption. I'm Alan Bergson, and I am joined here by Dr. Disruptive, Jonathan Yarmus. And we are here to talk about the latest in tech news. And
It's been an interesting few weeks since last we were on the air. As a matter of fact, interesting day today.
an interesting day today. Why don't we start with that?
Yeah, we have another one of these frothy internet valuation sales. For those of you who missed the news, Priceline acquired OpenTable for $2.6 billion today, which represents about a 46% premium to market of OpenTable's closing price yesterday, which suggests the fact that there was an active bidding war. You know, for those of you not familiar with OpenTable, and this is a service I love, it's an online restaurant reservation system. So no calling up the restaurant saying, do you have time available? OpenTable, you can go in, browse available reservation times, and with a click of a mouse, make a dinner reservation. Right. And I love the service. What makes it so particularly useful is making reservations now is a frustrating process. You call up, oh, I don't have a time available. You're dealing with one restaurant. There's no discovery option through the process. With OpenTable, you can browse available times. You can look at reviews. You can look at menus. All of that good pre-planning stuff. You can invite people. It's a fairly comprehensive system that makes the whole reservation process as painless as it can be. And you also, and one of the reasons why I love it is you get points which translate into money off. So I'm not sure how many reservations I've made, but I've got a $50 OpenTable certificate sitting there, right, ready to use at a restaurant. So it's good for the user in terms of rewarding usage.
Well, the interesting thing, though, is so OpenTable is it's a reservation system, but it's more than that. And I think this relates to what Priceline is getting out of it. Priceline was a ticketing system. It was what did you call it? A remnant.
Yeah, they were selling excess inventory.
Selling excess inventory.
Empty seats on airplanes, empty rooms in hotels.
But you talk about this all the time about that you want your vendors to know who you are and be able to help you do the things that they should know you want to do.
Right. And there are a couple of things that this one is good for. Because look at the information that an integrated travel and reservation system can make. It's like, okay, I'm going to Boston next week. While you're at it, would you like to make dinner reservations? Right. And it knows my dining history, so maybe I like Italian restaurants 70% of the time.
Well, that's a step up from think about my perspective when I look for a restaurant. I'll go look at a location and I'll go on Yelp and I'll look for reviews and stuff like that. But that's when I'm done. But that Yelp stops. I can't execute from Yelp. I can't take an action from Yelp. And Yelp doesn't know what restaurants I've been to. Maybe they know what I've clicked on before, but they don't know where I've actually been. And so this is a really interesting lifestyle integration process.
And you think of it, and we'll talk about this in context of Uber and what's going on there in a little bit, but it's to me, to make a technical term of it, it's process integration. Right now, my whole lifestyle is a series of discrete steps. How I get to a destination is different of how I get around at that destination is different from the set of activities I might do while I'm at that destination. And there are, in fact, logical points of integration and value that can be added by somebody turning that into a comprehensive system so that when I do certain things, it's aware of the other things I'm doing and the other things I have done. So I love this acquisition. It harkens back sometime in the mid-late 80s. United actually at one point owned Hertz and the Hyatt hotel chain. And the promise was, I could land, in O'Hare, and instead of having to pick up my bags at baggage claim, Hertz would either I mean, United would deliver them to the Hyatt Hotel. Or when I checked in the morning, I could just leave my bags at the hotel or leave my bags at the rental car drop-off. And that there were synergies to be achieved, then through the vertical integration of the process. I don't think we need to be vertically integrated anymore, but have connections between discrete services that give us that comprehensive end-to-end view. And I think this is, a wonderful move on Priceline's part to go do that, and a bargain at $2.6 billion.
And it's stepping out of the box. The holy trinity of travel is airfare, hotel, and car. Every site will tell you. They think that, okay, if you're booking a flight, you probably want a hotel and you probably want a car. And that's like a prepackaged set of things, but there's much more.
Oh, yeah.
And so this is a step outside that box saying, well, what you're going to travel, it's not about, what museum you're going to go to or what, site you're going to see, but there are certain necessities you have. You're going to need to, and we talked a little bit about, cars, are you going to rent a car or are you going to use Uber? Are you going to...
Right. And you start thinking about, the information. If, they're getting at actionable information, things they can use to enhance the experience and drive loyalty. This is real actionable data. This isn't, some nebulous Jonathan likes Italian food. It's here are the restaurants he's eaten at, and what can we divine, from the contextual awareness of specific things. He likes Northern Italian, or, gee, when he books a table for two, it's this kind of restaurant. When he books,
Right, and you've always said you don't mind if they collect information on you as long as they use it for your benefit.
Yes, and that's still one of the shocking things to this day is how bad, quote, contextual advertising is. And this is something where it's a thin line between, advertising is such a pejorative. It's something somebody is trying to force a message down to me. But I think there is a clear and distinct line between advertising that's trying to convince me that something's good that I may not have wanted, that I didn't know I wanted it until the advertising made me aware of it. And things like this, which are a clear value add. I looked at your calendar. I see you.
Well, it's almost like a point of purchase. When you're in a store, they put items near each other because they know, well, if you're looking for this item, you're probably looking for that. And that's a very basic one. But there's so many opportunities, in all of your purchasing or activity decisions.
Yep. I mean, I love it. It's one I think there's clear value that sustains evaluation.
So let's talk about our favorite topic, WWDC.
Yeah.
Apple. Apple moves and everybody pays attention. Lately, it seems that we're paying attention to not much. And so the news is no news often. So
well, I wouldn't say the news is not much, because one of the things about a developers conference is there is a lag between when something gets announced at a developers conference and when products manifest itself embracing what they've done, in the platform itself. So to expect things to come out that, wow, it changed the world today, no. You know me. I'm not what I'd call myself an Apple fanboy, to say the least.
Absolutely.
My political statement: I don't own any Apple products, and it's my vote for a free and open system. And I love what they do. What they do is beautiful, but to the issue of, is this earth-shattering? If I'm an Apple fanboy, yeah, Apple announced some really neat things from the perspective of what developers can now do with the platform, that there are notifications and inter-app functionality and communications, which for the Apple platform are really a large step forward, and which on the Android platform we've had for 4 or 5 years.
That's what I'm saying. It's playing catch-up, right?
Yes, yeah. There is nothing, I won't say nothing. There's very little here that's new in the marketplace.
Right.
But the existence of these features on Android have not lured the Apple faithful over to the Android platform. And now that it's on the Apple platform, they'll get the benefits of what I think are some really great and important and modern features and capabilities that will manifest themselves in exciting applications on the Apple platform that will maintain Apple's competitiveness, in the marketplace. So, it's an important step forward for them. What I'll find funny is when applications start to make it into market, the breathless, wow, look at what applications can now do, and 5 years from now, people will behave as if Apple invented this capability, but it's important and significant, and if you're in the Apple ecosystem, you'll see in, the 3 to 12 month time frame, applications with new functionality that really enhances the value of the platform and the application. So from that perspective, if you're in the Apple camp, this was a great set of announcements.
It's like when my wife says something and nobody hears it, and then I repeat it and everybody laughs.
I thought, that you were going to say, you said something smart, and everybody says how smart she is.
She always yells at me.
No, you married out of your league anyhow, so you can live with that.
No question. No question. So from a Apple strategy point of view, you've talked a lot about, you've always thought that there's this direction of home automation.
Yeah, that's one. I'm glad, it's probably January a year ago, so it's a year and a half now, that I wrote and said that the home automation market is the perfect market for Apple, that we've got these products that have been in the market. I mean, I started playing with X10 controllers in the 1980s, and those of you who don't know what X10 controllers are, you're probably better off. Just be aware that X10's lasting legacy in some ways is they're the people who invented the pop-up ad. So if there's ever a reason to hate them, it's that. So
you learned something here today on part of my disruption.
Yeah,
who to blame for pop-up ads? Excellent.
Right. But we've got a market that has great promise of functionality, all sorts of products in the marketplace that work badly, that have terrible interfaces, that don't communicate with each other very well. And that's a classic Apple market to enter and make a difference. We've seen that with user interfaces. We've seen that with music players.
But that's one of Apple's most powerful impacts is their ability to, because they want to control every aspect of it, they make something simple that works, as opposed to the chaos of multi-vendors, multi-standards, that type of multiple protocols.
The only difference here in this marketplace is the way they've done that before is by owning everything in the system. Here they're not owning everything in the system, and instead are saying to players, when you release devices, here's our platform. Make sure you work well with our devices, with our devices, because everybody's going to want to use them. And I think that's shrewd on their part, especially because, if you look, for instance, Google acquired Nest. Why didn't Apple acquire Nest? And that's that
what
one
you wrote about.
Yeah, and that still leaves me scratching my head, because there were so many natural reasons why I think Apple could and should have done that. But, I think they're at a point where they're saying, look, this market is so big, we don't have the bandwidth to introduce every device that's relevant into the home. So even while we may see things down the road from them in that space, for the time being, they're sending a message to the market. If you're going to build platforms, build it to ours. And I think, it's also a competitive thing, because, they're not the only ones doing that. Google is making big bets in that space, and Microsoft wants to be, a player there too. So they had to announce something, and in the absence of devices, saying, for the time being, let's make the iPhone the home automation hub device that controls all of these things. Was the right play by them. I mean, it's a different Apple though. There are a whole bunch of things. Even what's going on now. Apple's longtime head of communications just announced her departure, and Apple's sending a message to the market where they've said the next person who comes in, they want to be a little more media friendly. And this is a company that's...
Can you say that? How did that come out of your mouth?
I know.
Apple media friendly.
I said more media friendly.
Okay.
You know, and maybe the first step is less downright media hostile,
right.
because that's a quantum leap from where they are now, where they're just ruthlessly secretive,
right.
And that is something that serves you well. But again, where are they in their existence? And this is the Apple challenge. It used to be every 3 years or so, Apple introduced something earth-shattering. And we can go through. If you want to call the MacBook Air earth-shattering, maybe not, but iPod, iPhone, iPad, we're now more than 3 years away from a breakthrough Apple product introduction. Right. It's unclear what the
We're back in. And we're back. You see, there's something, I think Apple doesn't want us to talk about Beats.
Right, yeah, pardon our disruption. We've been disrupted.
Right, exactly. No, but I wanted to talk about this one because everybody looks at it as a acquisition of some headset technology.
Yeah, and well, there are several things about that, that are laughable, interesting, questionable. I mean, this is one I still try and wrap my head around.
Well, let me give you, so I was watching a interview with Jimmy Iovine,
mm-hmm.
and he asked a great question, and you're a former disc jockey, so you'll appreciate this. He said, what song comes next? You listen to a song, nobody just listens to one song, you listen to a bunch of songs. When we grew up, we had an album. We listened to the whole album. We had even, we created mixtapes, and we put a lot of effort into that. People create playlists. But when you listen to a song, how do you know what's next? How do you know what song is related to that? And that's what he's, that Pandora's tried to do that. Spotify's tried to do that.
But do you really believe, and I'll admit to, I'm not a particular, I listen to music, and yes, what I miss in a lot of ways is the creativity of the programmer. And by that I mean, now everything's done by some Clear Channel executive who says, these are the songs that should go together, and frankly, I'm not sure that there's a lot of thought given to it, where before, the really great DJs created thematic mixes.
Right.
Alison Steele, the Nightbird, Vin Scelsa. I don't know if you're
absolutely,
absolutely.
Yeah,
I mean, who was just an amazing person, and programming was so integral to that. I think when you've got programmatic, non-personality oriented, what song comes next, I don't believe that there's any way whatsoever that they can differentiate their service based on the value of the what's next. I mean, really, it's, I don't care what a computer algorithm is going to generate.
Right, but
it can't replace the person.
But I do want to know the answer to that question. How many times do I look at my phone and say, I want to hear some music? I'm going to do a workout. What should I listen to? I'm going to, relax. No, but these are, you're poo-pooing it, but
I am.
But I think it's a challenge that, like I said.
I think 12-year-olds could solve that problem in 10 minutes. It's not worth billions of dollars. 12-year-olds in 10 minutes could give you 15 mixes. Here's your workout mix. Here's your romantic night on the couch with your wife mix. This is not worth billions of dollars. This is not why Jimmy Iovine is, interesting to Apple. It's just not that difficult. Go ahead, make the other case.
No,
Convince me why they're going to do something that's so amazing that I'm going to go, wow,
I think
the money Apple paid for Beats.
Well, no, but let's talk about, I think, the problem space. We grew up, we were used to having music curated for us. And we're in a curation, but we've gone away from curation. We're in a self-curation environment. You don't just pick up a newspaper and read it. You have 20 different feeds that you're pulling in information.
Another Apple weakness. We're in a community curated model, and Apple's never understood social.
Right. So because of that, there aren't albums. The producers put a lot of thought into what to put on now. Now we have one good song. We need to fill it up with another 15 so we can sell it for $20. But it's not a curated experience. I mean, there are exceptions out there, and there are artists who do that. So I think that maybe it's not an articulated need, but I think that if you can come up, that's people like to have that curation from someone who's an expert, and someone who really knows what they're doing are going to change the experience. You listen to, there are good DJs and there are bad DJs. There are good producers and there are bad producers. So if you could come up with a way to curate, so here, I just heard a song, Jack White's new song, Last Ride. I was like, that's a great song. And I said to myself, I want to hear more like that.
Yes, and that's table stakes, because everybody will give you a music like that.
But it's not good.
Yeah, but I don't think we'll ever see a reviewer say that, wow, you should pick Spotify over Beats because their music curation recommendations are better. I think all of these things are okay, and what makes it good? What makes it good to me is a couple of elements. It's what are my friends listening to? The serendipity factor. Can you occasionally present to me things that I hadn't heard before? I don't think that there's a huge opportunity to differentiate. I don't think the market will perceive that. I think it's table stakes. I frankly left scratching my head. Things that are valuable. One of the things that Apple has always bet on was music ownership, and what they haven't been competitive or present in is the music rental space.
Right.
So with Beats, they've got a music rental.
But so Beats is a high quality. So just to continue on this, because I think this is one of my favorite topics. So Beats is about the sound. Jimmy Iovine talks about the fact that you're taking, it's your lowest common denominator. You got these little earbuds listening to a compressed MP3,
Yeah.
which is, we have a whole generation of kids who don't know what music sounds like because
Right.
they listen to compressed music.
Yes.
So where do you think that fits into this? I mean, are they going to come out with a higher level of streaming service, or?
That's an interesting question, because I think you're right. That we wanted higher and higher definition audio. We had great speakers. We had great higher and higher resolution TVs, and now when you watch everything on a tablet or a phone and listen to everything, having a lossless MP3 doesn't really matter, because if you're putting it through earbuds,
Which is, what's your lowest common denominator?
yeah.
Right.
So are they perhaps making a bet that we're going to return to quality? I don't know. I see no evidence of it. I'm not convinced people want to pay for it. Do I rue the fact that we listen to low quality stuff? Yeah. Do I think that again justifies the purchase here? Probably not. And look at the whole history of audio. If you were to probably if you asked 100 people who delivers the highest quality audio in the marketplace, I'll bet you 75 of those people would say Bose.
Right.
You talk to people who really know audio, Bose sucks. It's they've done a great job of marketing the brand, and making people think what they're hearing is really good, when the truth of the matter is it's not very good compared to other comparably priced.
Right, but you don't see a lot of marketing around quality of music. You see marketing around lifestyle. I can listen to my music anywhere, or that kind of thing. Meaning, I have a USB or a Bluetooth speaker that I can put on my deck. Waterproof earbuds that I can use while I'm swimming. Whatever. But it's all about lifestyle, but not necessarily about quality.
Yeah, and when do you need quality? Quality matters when you're going to a performance at Carnegie Hall. If you're blasting tunes for your party, it doesn't really matter, because nobody's stopping and going, wow, the depth of the bass there is really good.
Right. So then we're just a bunch of curmudgeons saying, we know there's a difference, but nobody else cares, so maybe it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Now, that said, and one of the people here asked about Apple's decision to remove the headphone jack, from, and I think, clearly, is there an opportunity to improve the quality experience? I suppose there is, and in the Apple base, which is a higher end base, do they have an opportunity to say, gee, you want crap stuff, buy something from Samsung or whomever. If you want really high quality stuff, buy it from us. Yeah, in that high end market, there's a bit of an opportunity to differentiate. Frankly, I think the audio experience is a red herring with regards to the headphone jack. I think that's as much about payments as it is about headphones.
Payments.
Because payments is such a fascinating space. There are so many people fighting for a piece of the transaction. The handset manufacturers, the platform manufacturers, the carriers, the existing payments players. There are all sorts of people fighting for it. But what's one payment platform that, in fact, has successfully disrupted the market? And that's Square. You take a little device, you plug it into the headphone jack, and now we're a payments player.
That's right.
Go to any art show.
So what does Square think about getting rid of the headphone jack?
I'm sure Square is sitting there going, "Holy crap!" They'll position it as, "Wow, the market is recognizing blah 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 blah." But the truth of the matter is, Apple's fired a none too subtle shot across their bow that said, we're not in love with people, competing with payments on our platform. We want to be the payment controller. And if eliminating the headphone jack gives them some ability to control what connects to their devices, from an audio perspective, a payments perspective, and a variety of other things, I think it behooves Apple. The elimination of the headphone jack, it just leaves me scratching my head, saying, what's in it? Is it really that bad a thing? You know, it doesn't have a high cost overhead.
Well, but are they looking for real estate on the phone? I mean, real estate on the phone is tight.
You know, no, it's not. You know, look at what the headphone jack takes up. You know,
Yeah, but
there's still a lot of
there-
black space. There's still a lot of black space. You know, they've already got that. So
But it's coming in here and stuff.
no, it's
Right.
the answer is no. It's not a real estate play. Yeah, this is a platform control play,
Right.
which Apple does very well.
All right, enough about Apple.
Never enough. Yeah,
Never enough.
Yeah.
No, I want to talk about another one of my favorite topics, which was the so-called sharing economy, and we'll talk. And I'll talk about Uber in a minute. But I saw a commercial, and this was the first time I've seen a commercial for a sharing economy product. A woman lost her job and didn't know how to make ends meet, and then she found Airbnb. And now she makes pancakes for her guests.
Yes.
And now, you saw the commercial?
Yeah.
That was, and part of me thought, wow, that's great. And part of me was like, really?
Well, you know, this sharing economy thing, you know, and you know, analyst Jeremiah Owyang, you know, who used to be at Forrester and Altimeter,
Yep.
You know, is big on this space. And this is one of those things. You know, if you're over the age of about 35, you don't really fully appreciate the profound change that's going on here. And to give you an idea of that, I was watching something yesterday. When we were growing up, about 10% of the kids 18 years old didn't have driver's licenses.
Right.
Today, that number is 31%.
Wow.
Yeah. You know, there are an increasing number of people who are feeling like ownership of certain things, you know, of resources you only use occasionally, is unnecessary. You know, and whether it's cars, you know, whether it's spare bedrooms, there are a whole bunch of things that people don't need to own now. And you know, you've got Airbnb, you've got Uber playing into the space, you know, and Lyft and others, you know, where the whole idea is I don't need to own scarce resources. You could even make the argument that Google self-driving cars is a play in that space. You know, if I don't want to own a car, why do I even want to invest in driving the car? And I think there are a whole bunch of changes. It started in some ways, if you want to be, you know, some big macro level social scientist, Craigslist. Craigslist created an efficient marketplace for the acquisition and disposition of assets. You know, things that before I would have thrown out. Now I can move them into the market. You know, maybe I can realize some economic value.
Even more so than eBay?
I'd give eBay large credit for that too. You know, eBay is a little more of a formal marketplace.
Oh, but it is now. When eBay started, it was.
Yeah, but Craigslist is a sharing account.
No, definitely.
Yeah.
Right.
You know,
And it still looks like it.
Yes.
It's amazing, that interface.
Yeah, but you still use it.
I do.
Yeah.
I just sold my kids' bicycles on Craigslist.
Yeah, a few years ago.
IRS, you didn't hear that.
You know, a few years ago when I was going back and forth to Boston, I had an apartment up there, and I largely furnished my apartment up there through Craigslist. You know, I picked up a TV there, a coffee table here, you know, a whole bunch of things. This wasn't going to be a primary residence. I was living like a college student, and I equipped it. And this whole sharing economy thing is really large, and I think you're looking at some fascinating struggles. You know, I don't know if you saw what happened yesterday across Europe.
Right.
You know,
So now we can talk about Uber, right?
Yeah. You know, where taxi drivers in London and Paris and I think about a dozen other European cities engaged in this, let's see if we can gridlock the city exercise as a way of protesting against Uber.
Is this John Henry against the steam engine? I mean, that's kind of what it is.
Yeah, well, you know, there are so many fascinating angles to this, you know, because one is, okay, what's the consumer value here versus the city's legitimate interest in preserving safety. So why do we regulate taxis? Is it so that...
Why do we regulate taxis? Why do we regulate hospitality?
Yes.
Why do we regulate restaurants and hotels and all that stuff? I mean, that's my concern, actually.
Well, but I'm not sure it's my concern. You're starting to sound a little bit like a curmudgeon. Yeah, and you do that well.
All right.
But the concern where it manifests itself is you used to feel like you needed to be protected. That when you chose lodging or chose transportation, you needed some protection that the provider was in fact who they represented themselves to be.
Right.
Now, when you look at an Airbnb or you look at a Uber or something like that, I can in fact look at the community ratings and see how well did that driver perform, how good, and we can question how legitimate ratings are and stuff like that, although
they're only going to get better.
Yeah,
in terms of the how accurate they are, and the quantity of fake versus real.
And what I like about these ones is the only ratings actually come from somebody who consumed the service. It's not like Yelp where you can have a whole bunch of make-believe people. It's harder, not impossible, but harder to game the system here. So I know who's a good driver. Oh, by the way, the flip side of that is they know who's a good passenger.
Right. Well, that's the eBay story.
Yeah.
And I always love that model.
Yes, I do too. So I think I understand, and boy, it used to be the romantic notion, and I loved going to London, as compared to New York, where London, you could give them the most obscure address in the world, and they knew where it was, because they spent 3 years learning the knowledge, and the test to become a cab driver was insanely complicated. And now somebody who...
Now it's here.
Yeah. But oh, by the way, isn't that before we used to need the cabbie to know that, because how else were they going to find where they were going? Right. Now with GPS technology that in fact gives me real-time traffic and can route me around accidents instead of getting stuck like you did today, is a value proposition and is better than the knowledge. So I understand the challenge for those who invested 3 years of their life, or those who invested millions in a taxi cab medallion in New York, looking at these people with minimal investment coming into their marketplace. But look at the consumer value proposition. The consumer value proposition is compelling. I don't have to stand on a stupid street corner in the rain hailing a taxi. I don't have to fight. Two people.
Or figure out what that sign means, because everybody comes to New York and nobody knows how to read. They're hailing taxis that are off duty.
Yeah.
They don't know.
Yeah. Or they don't understand the etiquette that if I'm standing here, if you stand 15 feet before, I'm going to in fact hit you with my umbrella or something. Right. I think. And
no cop in New York would arrest you for doing that.
Right.
They
that's a whole other thing. How you behave in certain cities and what's accepted social behavior.
Right.
But I think we're looking at something here, and were I to try and justify the $19 billion valuation for Uber, and that's a difficult one, because that is such a huge bet on a wildly uncertain outcome, because I think even if Uber controlled every taxi reservation in every city in the world, that alone probably doesn't justify a $19 billion valuation. It's a bet so much on what are the other things they might get involved in. What are the logistics?
Delivery. They're already doing that.
Yeah.
I mean, once you control a piece of transportation,
right?
What else can you do with that piece of transportation?
Yeah, and that's what I say. It's a highly speculative one from the perspective. There are some pretty big entrenched transportation delivery guys.
Let's say I have a truck and I'm going cross country, and I've got an extra 30 cubic feet of space on it.
Right.
And what do you give me for that?
Yeah, and I think there's a big long tail there. Yeah. Right. I think when you look at what UPS and FedEx have invested in technology and the things they're capable of doing. You know, if you remember some years ago, FedEx kind of got into the fax delivery business because, you know, their trucks are all hugely busy before 10 a.m. and after 3 p.m.
Right.
They're 5 hours in the middle of the day. What are they going to do with the trucks? You know, they've already thought this one through, have the infrastructure in place to do it. Right. So I think that, you know, they can legitimately compete in the space. But yeah, that whole transportation logistics, I mean, Walmart looked at having their customers deliver products.
Right. Yeah. What I find fascinating about these types of businesses is that they allow people to go into business. Meaning eBay was, to me, was that first one where people started eBay stores. And so they were able to be in business with somebody else's technology.
Yep.
Somebody else handling all of the logistics and infrastructure that you would normally need to open up a store.
Yeah.
Well, it's all you need to do is just sign in and create an account, and now you're in business. And the same thing with Uber. If I want to be in the cab driver business, I just need to sign up and
I love it from that perspective. You know, I times in my life have had free time, and I look. There's a service around here called Drive My Car or something like that, where if you want to go to the airport, you know, I'll save you money. I'll actually drive your car, you know, return it back home and pick up my car. And the requirements to do that were so onerous. It's like, okay, I'm not really going to do it, but you know, now.
I remember when I was in college, there were services. You know, people. You know, I live in New York, and we want to go to Florida for spring break.
Yeah.
And there were services we're saying because people would want people that the snow, what do they call them?
Snowbirds.
The snowbirds would want to have their cars. You know, they'd fly down. They want to have their car in Florida. So you would drive them down. You get paid to drive them down.
Yeah. Or Hertz, you know, always had a business. A lot of people who, you know, in the fall were taking one-way rentals from New York down to Florida, with the net result being they had too many cars in Florida. If you wanted to drive back from Florida to New York, they'd almost give you the car for free. And and I think you apply that on a macro level where we're going to more, you know, we've over-invested in a whole bunch of resources, and this is something that's taking place at so many levels. You know, what's cloud computing? Cloud computing is a response in some ways to the fact that we all over-invested in capacity and had to own our capacity. Right. If we all agree to share capacity, Amazon makes the big investments, and we can share Amazon's investments. So I can only use exactly what I need, nothing more. I have, you know, infinite flexibility. You know, that if I'm doing the Victoria's Secret fashion show.
Amazon is a sharing economy.
Yes.
See, Jeremiah, did you hear that? You got to go talk to Amazon.
I think he's aware. Yeah, no, but it's
but people don't think about it.
And it's not just the the efficient, the sharing economy is kind of a user value proposition, but the macro trend here is we've got inefficient allocation of resources, and can we create marketplaces that enable us to easily allocate the resources across a broad community and get better resource utilization? And the economist in me, and I was an economics major in college, the dismal science. The economist in me says that efficient use of resources is a compelling economic phenomenon that will drive utilization. And if you've got concerns about, how good my driver really is, I'd actually argue that those concerns are really silly. Compare your Uber experience to your New York City Yellow Medallion experience.
It's no comparison.
Yeah. That the Uber experience is better.
But because I see that New York City, licensed by whatever, there's some sense that this is.
Yeah, and it used to be a good thing because when you compared it to Gypsy cabs, the mere name Gypsy cab, sends a message about the service value, and it was inferior to what you were getting. You were probably paying a price premium for the substandard experience. Here in Stamford, Uber opened service in Connecticut about a month ago. The Stamford taxi service, I'm sorry to say, it probably qualifies, vintage car treatment. That you've got cars that, strong six-figure mileage. You know, the last ounce of comfort in the cushion was
with tires that you can, you can see your reflection in.
Yeah, a dragster doesn't have slicks any better than that. You know, with a driver who may or may not know where you're going and if they don't, has a difficulty communicating with you to share it. You know, where Uber comes in, first of all, and this is amazing to me, they're underpricing the taxi by about 15% here in Connecticut. Underpricing the taxi.
But isn't that an attempt for market share? I mean,
you know, not necessarily, because one of the things Uber would argue is that's a sustainable advantage they've got because they can better allocate resources, based on an understanding of supply and demand, rather than the cab sitting at the Stamford train station waiting for the next train. So if they've got better utilization, that's the Southwest airline model. They get an extra turn out of their airplane. So in addition to ruthless cost control, they get better revenue opportunity out of their planes than other providers, and therefore it enables them to charge a lower price. And it's this economic argument for resource utilization.
So the $19 billion valuation is on future expectations beyond their core product.
Yeah, and clearly and highly speculative. It's one of those ones where someday, and this is why what makes horse races. Someday we'll either go, wow, good ball, guys, or we'll look and say, how could anybody ever have believed that one was worth $19 billion? Oh, I can make a case for it, but there's so many ifs that if you were to do ruthless profitability analysis, I'd go, I don't think so, probably not, and it makes it an unlikely scenario, but that's why venture capital exists. There are people out there willing to make bets because if they're right, there's a lot of money to be had.
All right. So before we wrap up, we still have to talk about your one of your favorite topics, which you just looked at, and which Apple's talking about it. Wearables. It seems like an obvious market that's something that nobody's really figured out yet.
Yeah, I think it's an obvious market. It's also, to use my old Gartner parlance.
I mean, from a wearables point of view, you really. The Daily Show had. You see the Google Glass?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's easy to laugh at now, but to use the Gartner hype cycle parlance, and this stuff happens pretty quickly these days. We go into this period we call the peak of inflated expectations, where this is going to solve every problem known to mankind. You put on these glasses, they're going to make you more attractive, more intelligent, safer, healthier, all of that kind of stuff. And we promise the world. And guess what? One day we discover, right now this first iteration does none of those things. And we enter what we call the trough of disillusionment. And the trough of disillusionment, and we're entering that in the
That's my favorite.
Yeah. We're entering that in the wearable space now. The trough of disillusionment says, how could I have ever believed that? Who was actually going to wear glasses with a camera on it? Who's going to wear a stupid nerdy watch with a camera? Not terribly stylish and so on. And what's the value proposition? Let's throw out, and give up on the category.
Right.
And we then finally emerge into what we call the plateau of enlightenment. And the plateau of enlightenment says, guess what? This stuff is pretty good. There is some there, and we can go deliver against that and deliver a compelling value proposition. The interesting thing about that, in my 30-plus year of technology experience, the funny thing is that period of what we call the peak of inflated expectations, in some ways actually understate the future value we're going to deliver. So let's go back to turn of the century and the talk about the internet.
I was going to say which century.
Yeah, I'm not. Shut up. Yeah, the one I was around for. Yeah. but Internet 1.0, and it's convenient to laugh about Pets.com and Webvan, and
the fact that a browser company was valued at $1 billion.
Yeah,
a browser.
And here we are, 14 years later. If I had said in 2000, the Internet's going to be so important to everything we do that if your Internet connection goes down, you may as well go home. That there's nothing you can do, that it is going to be so incredibly important that governments involved in fights are going to try and shut it down and discover that the harm they inflict on their own economies is so severe that they are going to actually reinstate the service and live with the insurrectionists communicating that way. You would have asked me what I was smoking and whether I could share it.
No, look.
And that's what's happening now.
But right, because I was in the IT service management business, and part of the discussion I always had with customers was, well, if your internet goes down, what do we have to have here so you can be in business? But that question is almost irrelevant, because you're right. If your internet goes down, more and more you're out of business.
Right. And so I think the whole notion of wearables and what we might do with them, and it relates more broadly to the Internet of Things. Well, I can take but you can point to any device in this room, any device in your home, and I'll tell you why it's better with an Internet connection.
Right, but there's the interesting trend for me there is, so this device is my Rolodex, it's my phone, it's my pager. I'm going back to old technology.
Right.
It's my Walkman. We used to have specialization. We used to have one device that does one thing, and then we went to one device that does everything. But tell me how that's impacting the wearables, because it seems like.
I think that's a fleeting phenomenon. As a matter of fact, the first research note I wrote for Gartner in 1987 said the single converged device will never exist. I've reiterated that position about every 5 years ever since, and believe that now. It's funny you say that that's your device. Now, I admit that I am not necessarily your normal use case. However, I just had a conversation with a guy with whom I'm doing some work. I had a problem accessing Outlook Web Access, and it turned out I was getting kicked out because he set the maximum number of devices that could connect on a single account to 5. And he wondered why, and he set it at 5 because he had 5.
Right.
And I tried to access it from a 6.
Right.
And had a problem, and you sit there and say, what are the 6 that I've, had? And I've got my cell phone, I've got a 7-inch tablet and a 10-inch tablet. I've got 2 laptop computers, one a legacy one I've just replaced, and I've got a desktop computer.
So you're talking about the differentiator is concurrent usage for a
it's not just
experience.
It's not just concurrent usage. It's like there are certain things where I still. Why do people still carry iPods sometimes? And there are a couple of reasons why. One,
they paid for it.
But there's that. But there's also, that device, until, and there was this announcement, with PowerMat that they're going to, Starbucks is going to start having charging tables in their Starbucks stores, so that if you got a, hopefully, a Qi enabled, I hope they go with the standard. You can just set your device down. Battery power is something you need to manage.
Right. Absolutely.
I need to manage it.
Think about it on that.
This is, 4,500 milliamp hours.
And you can't see, but he's got his phone plugged in right now, charging.
Yes, and replaceable batteries. Try that one, iPhone buddy.
I don't know. I can't figure out how to open this thing.
Yeah, but power, is and remains a consideration.
It's replaceable. It just takes very specific tools and about 2 hours.
And a violation of the warranty.
Exactly.
Yeah. But other than that, But so specialized devices have advantages from user interface. I don't have to navigate 7 layers down in a menu to get this. Motorola looked at doing something like this a few years ago, where they kind of skin your phone differently depending upon the use case. So rather than running an app, you could put it into music mode. And this may not be advancing my argument because we all know how well that did. But I think there are different devices. That a general purpose device is important and good, but it doesn't replace always the need for specialized devices.
Right.
It constrains the market,
right.
but doesn't eliminate the market. And so I think the general purpose and specific purpose, and it's also, why do I, when I bought this, I'm surprised because I buy a lot of things. Best Buy must really hate me because the number of things I return after 28 days is significant, and that's why they started adding restocking fees to certain things, because I was using it as a rental library where the rental cost was zero.
Right.
I thought I was going to return this, but the advantage it's got, the phone is either in your pocket or intrusive. You've got to pick it up to look at it.
That's what I'm saying, concurrent usage, meaning it's all part of one experience, as opposed to having a device for one unique experience. You have multiple devices doing the same experience on multiple devices concurrent.
Yes, and sharing information.
And right.
Yeah, because one of the things, I love what I do on my MP3 player when it connects to share what music I listen to, what music I rated with all of my music services, so that it informs a Songza or a Spotify or something like that, to influence the music it gave me. So yes, I want information shared in a bi-directional mode with, importantly, and this is a topic for a whole other year, how I protect that environment, that information, how we ensure responsible usage of it, so you've seen instances, pregnant girls being outed to their parents because of ads that started popping up on screens, or
so speaking of what you want, we have a new segment this week which we're calling Pet Peeves. So pet peeves from Dr. Disruptive. So we got a couple minutes left. Let's talk about some of your pet peeves.
Yeah, my pet peeve number one, and I had reinforcement of this one last night, and that is software installs that have defaults not the way any user would want to have them, and even worse, oftentimes drag down add-on software that conflicts with the standards you set up.
At minimum, you should let me decide where to install it. That's one that really gets me. Meaning, I don't want it on, I have 2 hard drives on my desktop.
I don't want you installing it unless I, explicitly say I
No, I'm not even talking about the extra software. I'm talking about just the software itself. Meaning, I don't want to put it on my C drive. That's my solid-state drive. It's this big. I want to put it on my big drive where I put all my software.
There's a second world problem. That is not my pet peeve.
Okay.
I suppose I care, but not that much.
But it's people who aren't aware. They end up getting all sorts of other software on there.
Particularly
the free stuff, the Adobe stuff.
Yeah. But we know that these are not the defaults that anybody really would want to have, and they're trying to trick you into changing your default browser, your default search page. I got a call last night from my sister, who actually, as a sideline, performed technical support. She worked for Procter & Gamble for her region. And she called me up, my mother's computer was behaving funny, and I don't know how she did it, but somewhere it changed the default start page, on her web browser, changed the default settings. And, oh, by the way, set it so the browser started up on startup. So the first thing she saw was, this software, or the things, another pet, one who does a speed test, our favorite, how fast is my internet connection?
Right.
The click to test the speed is dwarfed by the click here to test your computer, when in fact it's tricking you to do one of those download and scan things that will then recommend you do all sorts of things that are unnecessary, and, oh, by the way, they're unnecessary and we want you to pay for them because of some alarmist message. That stuff kills me. And I'm a technically savvy user, and they trick me. You know, I hated Adobe, I hated Oracle, stop it.
On that note, well, thank you for joining us today on Pardon My Disruption. I'm Alan Berkson, and I'm joined as always by the Dr. Disruptive, Jonathan Yarmus. And this has been another episode of Pardon My Disruption.
And we'll see you again the second Friday of every month. You know, join us here or online or live at the Stanford Innovation Center.